All right. Thank you, everybody, for joining. Just a little bit of an overview. The World Parkinson Congress this year was held in Barcelona between the 4th and the 7th of July, 2023. And there was a contingent of 2,600 people from 73 countries around the world, including 180 people from Australia, which were representatives from Parkinson's New South Wales, Fight Parkinson's, Shake It Up Foundation, Parkinson's Queensland, Parkinson's Western Australia. There were researchers, individuals with Parkinson's, caregivers, family members, all of that. So it was an amazing gathering. There was also more than 900 medical doctors and researchers, 450 registered nurses, 5 of which were from New South Wales and Parkinson's New South Wales, and there were other clinicians, 685 people living with Parkinson's, and 260 care partners and family members all came together at the Congress this year, which was just absolutely amazing. And what I'm showing you here are just some photos from again, the Congress itself. So you can see a bit more. There was also a surprise. I'm not sure if any of you have seen this, but at the opening ceremony, there was a surprise video, and I'd just like to play a little bit of it for you. If you can't hear or see, would you please just unmute and let us know?
And I'm welcoming you to the World Parkinson Congress. Many years ago when I was at school, my best friend was called Ivan Vaughan, and he and I were great buddies. And in fact, Ivan actually introduced me to John Lennon. So Ivan was a very important person in my life. Unfortunately, at a very early age, he contracted Parkinson's disease, and I saw the whole thing happen and was really sad when, aged 51, he died. So it still hurts to this day to think about it. But however, my friend Michael has done a version of my song Rocky Raccoon, and he's called it Parky Raccoon, and it's very good, it's very funny, and gets over the message. So we'd love you to have a look at it, have a listen, enjoy it, and enjoy your time at the World's Parkinson Congress. Thank you.
So that was just a nice little message from Sir Paul McCartney, I should say. I was going to say John Lennon. That wasn't John Lennon. A couple of the highlights that I'd like to share with you all. So some of the key topics, and every year there are, every 3 years rather, there are some themes. So some of the highlights from this Congress were about self-monitoring, where in particular there is a PhD student by the name of Sarah Rigger, who's a woman and mother living with Parkinson's since she was a teenager. So at the age of 13, she started to develop symptoms, but she wasn't diagnosed until about 20 years later. So about the age of 33, she was diagnosed. She worked with Professor Baz Blom on a PhD thesis around monitoring for patients living with Parkinson's. Her sense, and Dr. Baz Blom shares this with her, is that specialists and neurologists get to see patients, and you all can imagine this in your own scenarios. They get to see patients in their office one day out of 365, or maybe one day every 6 months for a few minutes. And that time frame is then used to then treat, you know, what's going on at the time, or then the next 6 months or the next 12 months. So her thought and what her thesis is on is that gathering information, being aware of your own symptoms through tracking and bringing the informations to doctors was a real key. And then there was also a lot of information shared about using remote monitoring, telehealth and its benefits, and engaging not just for that 5-minute motor exam in the clinic, but actually adding to the whole picture of what is happening with you as the individual. So that was self-monitoring. One of the other key themes was diet and lifestyle. So I know there has been some interest and there has been some questions from the registration to this Zoom about the diet and was there any presentations. Leading that is a dietitian from Ireland. Her name is Dr. Rochelle Flanagan. And she's also living with Parkinson's, and she spoke a lot and had a lot of sessions about our diet and lifestyle. She's co-authored a paper about the unmet needs of women with Parkinson's, but also described the role of a dietitian on being involved in the multidisciplinary care team. She also comes from the point of view that dietitians should be included and should be more educated about the specific needs of Parkinson's, and that having a dietitian, if you have one in your midst or can access one in your multidisciplinary team, is something to really, really well consider, to be considered. The other thing was women and Parkinson's was very also quite a common theme and thread. Lots of discussion and conversation and plenary sessions on this. So women around the world have been living with Parkinson's, who are living with Parkinson's, have been rallying together. And Rochelle Flanagan, the dietitian, has also developed an app that's about to launch, and it's called My Moves Matter. All of this information will be shared, and all the links to everything will be shared after the presentations today. And it incorporates today, and it's specifically for women. So it talks about the menstrual cycle, talks about, or rather tracks hormones, and it basically how things affect women that are different clearly to men. Just admit, Leon. And so it's a symptom tracker, which is meant to be quite good. And speaking of, there was another launch at the Congress relating to women, and it's a new pregnancy registry by a Dutch lady named Enneleen Oosterbaan, who is in the Netherlands, and she's also working with Dr. Bas Blom, and it's called pregspark.com. The idea with the registry is for women worldwide to go on and to log some information, to gather evidence, and a platform for women, pregnant women who are living with Parkinson's, to support each other as well. So an amazing amount of information there for women. There was also a book launch, and it's called In Her Shoes, that was authored by about 5 or 6 very strong and influential women with Parkinson's globally. So there'll be a link to that so that you can go on and have a read about women and Parkinson's as well. This year, they also had a support group leader lounge. So for many of you on this meeting who are support group leaders, this might be of interest to you. So they talked about a variety of different topics, and they also launched a global support group leader guideline, or guide rather. So that's something that we're all looking at back at Parkinson's New South Wales, but that was a great place for support group leaders to come together and to share ideas and to learn from each other. Another great initiative was a care partner lounge. So I know that there were, so every day there would be meditations, there would be yoga sessions, there would be dance classes, opportunities to network and to come together and also share. Another feature was the book nook. So where they had an area designated to books that were either recently published or have been published for a few years, but an opportunity to then meet with the authors. I think there was about 3 or 4 sessions where some of the authors were there, and so you could do quite a good session with them and do some meet and greets. So that was basically some of the themes or some of the highlights running through. I know that there's a lot of interest. So what about research? What about any breakthroughs? What about some of the common, and Vince might have more to add here, but one of the highlights and one of the things that they kept talking about throughout the Congress, throughout those 3 days, was the concept of that multidisciplinary team of support and care, which isn't a new term. We talk about it quite a lot, but it's expanded and it's becoming very talked about globally. And this is where, we talk about the concept of prehabilitation as opposed to rehabilitation. So this is where they're talking about wellness prescription that they're trying to formulate with what they're calling your wellness task force or your multidisciplinary team. There's a sense that everybody should be engaging with the team. A number of physical therapists and other people around the world presented on this topic, and not just a reactive or a reaction, but a proactive education sort of model, which is and teaching other people how to live better as well. Lots of talks about proactive lifestyle choices and wellness. So being able to take control and make proactive lifestyle choices that make you feel like you're an agent of your own outcome, if you like. And this is a message that was carried through by a lot of individuals as well. So they're asking for people to be active members of the multidisciplinary team at the centre of that personalised approach. The sessions themselves were quite so many to choose from. But they classified each session. So you had a basic science, a clinical science, or a comprehensive care sort of classification level. And then each session had a different level of, what sort of scientific understanding or level of you needed to have. So whether a session was highly scientific, moderately, or minimally. And this is how they structured all of the talks. There were hot topics that ran, so 4 hot topics were presented every day, generally given by researchers and clinicians, and in some cases, most of these were quite new to the field of Parkinson's. The role of the dietitian, survey data set of women with Parkinson's. Every morning, there was a panel that presented in what they were calling a plenary session. This was a very big lecture style room. That basically was exactly that, lecture style in its presentation. There was limited time for questions and answers, but all of the speakers at these plenary sessions were available throughout that whole week and the Congress to do some, to continue discussions if you so chose. Some of the topics there was about the biological subtypes of Parkinson's. Do they exist? And the disease progression in Parkinson's and answering the why and the how. There were also some parallel sessions, so in-depth sessions focusing on specific cutting-edge research in the field, and then the underlying science behind many of the facets. Workshops, roundtables, wrap-ups, and all of that also then rounded out the Congress, and all of this over 3 days. It was absolutely enormous to choose what to do and where to go. So careful planning was very, very important. I just realised I'm not progressing my slides. I apologise. And then right at the end, I'd like to share the wrap-up video. And that's it from me. So I'll hand over to Vince. Vince, if you'd like to.
Yeah, no worries. Thanks, Morel, and hello to everyone. It's great to connect with everyone from all around the place. So I'm in cold Coffs Harbour today. It's actually a cold day here, but I'm sure you're in colder places around the New South Wales. Look, just thanks, Morel. That was really great. And I haven't done any sort of presentation like Morel, but certainly it's I've had a lot of memories, and that was my third opportunity to go to the conference. So I'd previously been to Portland in America and Japan a few years ago, and it was great to get together after such an interruption to everyone's life and in the world over the last couple of years. So just to touch on, you know, it's one of those unique conferences you go to as a health professional. It's great, you know, going to conferences and meeting people and talking to others, but this conference is very unique in the fact that you're sharing time with people who are living with Parkinson's and caregivers, and you have some of the best specialists in the world there. You have scientists, and you know, as they say in our motto, we're all in there together. And to be able to spend 5 days with people with Parkinson's, and I just admire you so much again for those people and locals that we had from here that travelled over, because I can tell you, travelling, whilst it all sounds exotic, it certainly has its ups and downs with security in airports. But for those people with Parkinson's who need assistance and are carrying different sorts of pumps, and you know, it was quite you know, well done to everyone. But hearing everyone's stories and being together for those days was very memorable. So again, there's just so much to sort of pick to talk about, but I'll go off the back of some of the things Morel said, as well as a few other things. Around diet, yeah, there was some really good talks around diet, especially from that academic person with Parkinson's from Ireland. And certainly she provided some really good information about general diets. And I can send some slides to Morel that you can probably send out after this. But, she talked about diets and, for example, the Western diet, and a really good slide that really has happy faces and sad faces. And let me tell you, the Western diet doesn't come up very well across all facets around it doesn't do much for anti-inflammatory, doesn't do much for your gut. It doesn't does a little bit for around your symptoms. It doesn't really help with slowing the progression. It doesn't really help around cognitive impairment. It doesn't really do much for weight gain. So really the Western diet didn't really stack up that well. But then on the opposing end of that, the Mediterranean diet just had happy faces everywhere. It's a great slide. It helps with anti-inflammatory. It helps with the gut. It helps with Parkinson's symptoms. It helps slow progression. It helps reduce dementia. And, the other good thing with the Mediterranean diet, you can lose some weight unintentionally. But so it's quite a good diet. And then they talked about vegan. Again, that was not as good as the Mediterranean. Gluten-free didn't come up very much across the board. Low GI, the keto diet, you might have heard the ketogenic diet. Again, that's quite good for, there's some good literature around the ketogenic diet for motor symptoms, but it's quite a hard diet to keep up with, and you can lose a lot of weight, lots and lots of weight. But there is some good evidence around its benefits in motor symptoms. And a fasting diet, there's a couple of happy faces, but there's certainly a lot of sad faces around nutrient deficiency and weight loss. And there was also a lot of discussion, or a bit of discussion around, vitamins. What supplements, should I take? And because there's certainly a lot of information out there, and there's a lot available. But we know people with Parkinson's and the medications that we treat people with Parkinson's, vitamin B deficiencies can be a problem. But I suppose the advice I would give everyone is just keep up your good relationship with your GP, have those annual, health checks, so you get your bloods checked and you get everything else checked. But there potentially can be a vitamin B deficiency there. So I can send around another slide on that as well. One thing that was very important and talked about in diet, and for people who take levodopa-based medications like Cimetapar, Stalevo, or Duodopa, it's about protein timing. So we've got good literature out there now around avoiding protein with your medication. So, the general principle we have as health professionals is, you take your medications away from food, either 30 minutes before or 60 minutes after. You also ensure that your bowels are working on a regular basis. We talk a lot about bowels in our job, and but we mean about going to the toilet each day and not straining, and also hydration, keeping up with the right diet to help your bowels. And the other thing is about medications on time. So that came up very loud and clear. So avoid protein, medications on time, and your bowels working is very important. So that was talked about there. And then Morel touched on I'll show something on my screen now for you to see. So we talked about the multidisciplinary approach to care for people with Parkinson's. And whilst there was a lot of talk, but I found this slide. Morel and I were in London a couple of days before we went to Barcelona, and this is a really good slide that came out pretty loud and clear. And this is from Professor Ray Chowdhury at King's in London. But there's a lot of talk around the multidisciplinary team, but also, monitoring of vitals dashboards. I'm just looking at like a dashboard. So you've got the motor symptoms of Parkinson's, and we've got plenty of measurements we can do with that, with motor measurements and sensors and technology. Then you've got the non-motor symptoms, which we talk a lot about, with the anxiety and depression and the burden carer burden and those sorts of things. So we've got lots of assessments around that. Another area which I've just touched on with diet is about gut health, but also oral health and vision health. So ensuring that your Parkinson's can affect your vision, and it does affect your gut. So keeping on top of that as well. The other one was bone health. So we know people with Parkinson's do have a higher incidence of osteoporosis. So, you know, you're monitoring your bone health, and there's certain ways that your GP can monitor your bone health. And then, unfortunately, as we get older and we have other comorbidities which might kick in. So there's, you know, ensuring that you're on top of that. And then with the medications we treat with Parkinson's, you can have compulsive disorders as well. So it's a bit of a, I like this dashboard. And it's something I think that it'd be great for people with Parkinson's to really take that one pager and take it to your GP and say, this is really how I want you to help me with my Parkinson's. You know, I really, I like that. So that was the multidisciplinary team approach. So, you know, you don't need to have, you know, I'm sure you all, some of you have a lot of people in your life with health professionals and doctors and going to appointments, but certainly it's not one health professional to look after you. You know, you need a team, and that team can change over time. The research, and I think, where do you start with that? There was just so much to see and look at and do and talk to. And I love, Rachel's not here. Rachel McKinnon's our nurse that now was working up here with me in Port Macquarie, then went down to Parkinson's New South Wales, and now she's taken off to Neuroscience Australia, and she's working with a very prominent neurologist there, Caroline Sue. So I say about, you know, it was a global research conference, but Rachel did a great job of photo bombing all these fantastic movement disorder specialists. So she managed to get a few photos with like our own Victor Fung, Bastian Bloom, who Morella already spoke about from Holland. And actually Bastian Bloom is the #1 movement disorder specialist in the world. But how do you measure that? That was quite interesting. How do you measure that? And it should make sure you've got to be on Twitter, and you've got to be on Facebook, and you've got to be on all those social media sites to get your ranking up there. But Baz Bloom was there, and he's very good. And then we had another guy, Ray Dorsey. Ray's a very prominent movement disorder specialist in the US. He's done a lot of research, and he gave a great presentation around exposure to chemicals and how that there is a link between chemical exposure and Parkinson's. And we know there's theories out there. But anyway, that's the name of a few people who Rachel photo bombed. So it was good. So I'm still online, so I've just had, yeah, my screen went a bit funny, but that's okay. And so for me, listening to all those people, but I also had the opportunity to present my poster, which was my leadership research that I've been doing over the last couple of years. So it was about building capacity for support group leaders. And I had 3 groups from across New South Wales that I interviewed. And Joy is there from Eurobadella, and Joy was one of the groups. There was also another group in Orange and Bathurst, and I had the opportunity to present my research without going into it here. But it was about building capacity for support group leaders. But there was hundreds and hundreds of posters. I think, I don't know, I think it was 400 or 500. And you only had a 2-day exposure, whereas the last conference you had it up for the whole 4 or 5 days. This time there was that many, you only got 2 days. But I managed to go around, and there were poster tours, and I really focused on getting around and seeing what I wanted to see, and catching up and getting lots of photos with people of those posters. But that was quite a unique experience because they were so diverse. The presentations I met an unbelievable guy. He was 34 with Parkinson's from Adelaide. And he presented his post. He wrote a book on his deep brain stimulation journey. And just to listen and talk to him and to hear his story, but also just to give him a great pat on the back for making his way to Barcelona and telling his story. It was just amazing. I met another guy with Parkinson's from Washington, and he was trying to change the world, which was great, around health professionals' awareness of people with Parkinson's. So he was targeting people at the health professionals, ambulance, hospitals, because we know the person's journey through the health system can be pretty disjointed. So he presented his poster on how he's trying to change the world in Washington, DC. So that was really good. And then there was another poster by a doctor, which was quite interesting, from a very well-known movement disorder hospital in America. And he was presenting a poster on how to improve medications on time for people with Parkinson's who go to hospital. I thought that was really interesting, that a neurology ward in a movement disorder hospital has problems as well. So we can be the best in the world at doing things, but the medication's on time, you can't get it right in a specialty hospital. So, you know, it was quite interesting. So that was great getting around and seeing all those posters. And I think around coming back to the research, whilst there was no major breakthrough announcement, I think, you know, we're in 2023, you know, we don't treat like the past anymore. We treat because now, to live well, but we don't know what's around the corner in the future. And with all those people working so hard around the world, doing collaborations across Europe, America, Canada, I mean, you've got 40, 50 countries and scientists involved in collaborations. You just got a feeling that something's going to happen. And that was probably the most refreshing thing for me. Again, there's so many people working so much hard. And then when you see Michael J. Fox and how much is poured into research and how much awareness is being raised. Yeah, so that was really quite refreshing and enlightening for me.